I remember the exact moment the light went out in my mother's eyes. It wasn't when the doctor told us my sister had a 20% chance of survival. It wasn't when the bank sent the foreclosure notice on the house they'd lived in for 30 years. No, the light went out when I handed her the receipt. A single piece of thermal paper showing a balance of 0. I thought I was saving us. I thought I was the hero of a story that had been a tragedy for far too long. But as my father's hand connected with my cheek, the sting wasn't just physical. It was the realization that in this family, my kindness was the ultimate betrayal. I had spent 3 years, sacrificed my youth, and emptied my soul to pay off my sister's medical bills, only to find out that my family didn't want a cure, they wanted a martyr. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe now to support me and motivate me to make more such videos. Do let me know in the comments of where you're watching from. The hospital smell is something you never really get out of your nose. It's a mix of industrial-grade bleach, floor wax, and that metallic tang of fear that seems to seep out of the vents. For 3 years, that smell was my shadow. My younger sister, Maya, was 22 when the world collapsed. One day, she was a senior at NYU with dreams of gallery openings in Soho, and the next, she was a ghost in a gown. Her body being eaten from the inside out by a rare, aggressive form of lymphoma. Maya was always the artist, the vibrant soul of the Vance family, while I was the one who balanced the checkbook and studied macroeconomics. Maya was the one who painted the sunsets and found beauty in the cracks of the sidewalk. When she got sick, it felt like the colour was being drained not just from her, but from the entire world. My parents, Martha and Robert, were good people. Or at least, I thought they were. We were a standard middle-class family from a quiet suburb in Ohio. My father worked at the local hardware store, a man of few words but steady hands. My mother was the glue, the woman who knew everyone's birthday and never showed up to a potluck empty-handed. But illness is a thief. It doesn't just steal your health, it steals your identity. My father became a shell, his pride crumbling as he realized he couldn't fix his daughter. My mother became a professional mourner, her life revolving around the next round of chemo and the next prayer circle. And then there was me, Eleanor. I was 26, working as a junior trader in Chicago. I was the strong one, the one who didn't cry at the diagnosis because someone had to hold the clipboard, talk to the insurance adjusters and decipher the cryptic language of medical billing. I was the family's rock, but even rocks erode when the tide is high enough. The bills started as a trickle and quickly became a landslide. $10,000 for a single round of specialized injections. $50,000 for a week in the ICU when her lungs gave out. The insurance company, those corporate vultures, found every loophole imaginable to deny coverage. They called her treatments experimental. They called her survival unlikely. They were essentially putting a price tag on my sister's life and telling us we couldn't afford it. I watched my parents sell their second car. I watched them take out a second mortgage. Every time I went home to Ohio, the house felt smaller, darker, as if the debt was a physical presence, a black mold growing in the corners of the ceiling. The laughter that once filled our kitchen was replaced by the frantic tapping of a calculator and the sound of my mother sobbing into her tea at 2 a.m. "Don't worry about it, Elena," my mother would whisper, her hands shaking as she stirred a pot of thin soup. "We'll manage. We have our faith. We have the community. People are being so generous." But managing meant my father was working double shifts at age 65. It meant Maya was sleeping in a room where the heat was turned down to save on the gas bill. I couldn't stand it. I was making decent money in Chicago, But decent wasn't enough to fight cancer and corporate greed at the same time. So I made a choice that would eventually cost me everything. I stopped taking vacations. I moved into a studio apartment that was little more than a closet with a hot plate in a neighborhood where I didn't feel safe walking at night. I took on every weekend shift, every soul-crushing project. I became a ghost in my own life. While my friends were going to brunch and getting married, I was staring at 3 monitors in a dark office, trading high-frequency algorithms until my eyes bled. I didn't tell my parents. I wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted to be the one to walk in and say, "It's over. The debt is gone. We can just focus on Maya's recovery." I envisioned the moment of relief, the way the tension would leave my father's shoulders, the way my mother would finally be able to sleep. By the fall of 2024, I had done it. Between my savings, my bonuses, and a series of high-risk trades that miraculously paid off, I had $420,000. It was a fortune to us. It was exactly what was owed to the hospital and the various oncology clinics. The day I walked into the hospital's billing department in Columbus, I felt like I was floating. The clerk, a tired woman named Linda, who had seen too much tragedy, looked at me like I was insane when I told her I wanted to settle the entire balance for Maya Vance. "Honey, you know this is a massive amount, right?" she asked, her glasses sliding down her nose. "I know," I said, sliding my card across the counter. "Just do it. Please. I need this to be over." When the transaction cleared, I felt a weight lift off my chest that I didn't even know I was carrying. I walked out of that hospital and breathed in the crisp, autumn air, crying tears of pure, unadulterated joy. I felt like I had finally wrestled my sister back from the edge of the abyss. I drove straight to my parents' house, the receipt tucked into a Hallmark card that said, "Congratulations." I was humming to the radio, imagining the celebration. I thought we would finally have our lives back. I arrived during Sunday dinner. My brother Caleb was there too. Caleb was the favourite, the one who stayed close to home. He worked a low-level sales job and spent most of his time supporting my parents by listening to them complain while never actually contributing a dime to the medical fund. He was the one who set up the Hope for Maya GoFundMe page, which had become quite popular in our small town. "Elena, you're home early," my mum said, looking surprised as I walked into the kitchen. She looked exhausted, her hair thinning from the stress. Maya was upstairs, resting after a particularly brutal round of chemo. "I have something for you," I said, my voice trembling with excitement, "for all of us." I set the envelope on the table. My father picked it up, his brow furrowed. He opened the card, and the receipt fell out. He stared at it for a long time. Then he passed it to my mother. I expected screaming. I expected hugs. I expected my mother to collapse into my arms in relief, thanking God and me for this miracle. Instead, the room went cold. A suffocating silence filled the space. "What is this?" my father asked. His voice wasn't filled with wonder. It was low, dangerous, like a storm brewing on the horizon. "It's the bill, Dad," I said, my smile faltering. "It's paid. All of it. The hospital, the oncology centre, the labs. We're debt-free. We don't have to lose the house. We can finally breathe." My mother's face went pale, but not with relief. She looked horrified. She looked at Caleb, who was staring at the receipt with narrowed eyes, his jaw set. "You paid it?" Caleb asked. "The whole thing? In one lump sum?" "Yes," I said, confused by the lack of celebration. "I've been saving for years. I worked extra hours, I skipped everything, I traded my life for this. Why aren't you happy?" "You stupid, selfish girl," my father hissed. The words hit me harder than a physical blow. I stepped back, my heart hammering against my ribs. What? Dad? I just saved the house. I saved Maya's future. You didn't save anything, my mother shrieked suddenly, standing up so fast her chair scraped harshly against the linoleum. You ruined it. You ruined everything we've been working for. I was spinning. I didn't understand. My brain couldn't process the words. Ruined what? The debt is gone. We were drowning, Mom. I saw you crying every night over those ledgers. We were in negotiations, Elena, Caleb shouted, leaning across the table, his face turning a blotchy red. Do you have any idea what you've done? We had a lawsuit in the works. A massive malpractice suit against the first clinic that misdiagnosed her. Our lawyers said the financial devastation was our biggest leverage. If the debt is gone, the damages are gone. You just threw away a $5 million settlement. I stared at them, my mouth agape. A settlement? You wanted the debt? You wanted to stay in the hole just to get a bigger payout? Maya is suffering now. The stress is killing her now. It wasn't just about the money, my father growled, stepping toward me. He looked like a stranger. It was about justice. And it was about the foundation. We have people donating every day, thousands of dollars coming in to help us stay afloat. Now that the bills are paid, that's over. People will stop giving. The Hope for Maya Foundation, you just killed the momentum. I felt sick. The Hope for Maya Foundation. I knew about it, of course. I thought the money was going toward her care, the things insurance didn't cover, the comfort items, the specialized diet. But as I looked at my brother's new designer watch and realized my parents hadn't actually missed a mortgage payment in months, despite their constant complaints, the truth began to curdle in my stomach. You're using her, I whispered, the realization chilling my blood. You're using Maya's cancer as a business model. Slap. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet kitchen. My father's hand was heavy, calloused from years of manual labor. My head snapped to the side, and the copper taste of blood filled my mouth. I didn't cry. I was too shocked to cry. Don't you ever say that, he snarled, his face inches from mine. We are the ones who are here every day. We are the ones who watch her vomit until she's blue. We are the ones who carry her to the bathroom. You live in your fancy apartment in Chicago and think you can just swoop in and play God with our lives. You're a traitor, Elena. You went behind our backs. You took away our leverage. You took away our future security. Your future security, I yelled, my voice cracking. What about Maya? She's upstairs right now, probably wondering why her family is screaming. I did this for her. So she wouldn't wake up from cancer only to find her family has turned into vultures. Get out, my mother said. Her voice was ice. No emotion, just a cold, hard command. She didn't even look at me. She started picking up the dinner plates as if I were a stranger who had overstayed my welcome. Mom, please. You heard your mother, Caleb said, his face twisted in a smug sort of satisfaction. He'd always hated that I was the one who made it out of our small town. Now he had a reason to cast me as the villain. You think you're so much better than us because you have a corporate job? Well, your generosity just cost this family millions. You're not a part of this family anymore. You're a traitor, a backstabber. Go back to your tower in Chicago. I looked at them, really looked at them. My father, the man I'd idolized, looking at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. My mother, the woman who used to sing me to sleep, turning her back to me. My brother the parasite, grinning because I'd finally been knocked off my pedestal. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't say goodbye to Maya. I couldn't. If I went into her room, I'd break, and I needed to stay strong enough to drive away. I stumbled out to my car, the rain starting to fall, mirroring the chaos in my soul. I drove back to Chicago in a trance. I didn't sleep for 3 days. The words traitor and selfish looped in my brain like a broken record. How could a gesture of love be interpreted as an act of war? I had given up 3 years of my life. I had worked until my health suffered. I had lived in poverty so they wouldn't have to. But as the days turned into weeks, the grief began to transform into something else, something sharper, something dangerous. I was a trader. I was trained to look for patterns, to find the hidden threads in a sea of data. I started looking into the Hope for Maya Foundation. What I found shattered what was left of my heart. The foundation had raised nearly $600,000 over 2 years through various fundraisers, bake sales, and the GoFundMe page. But when I used my access to certain financial databases and my knowledge of how to track shell accounts, I saw the truth. Only a fraction of that money, maybe 20%, had gone to Maya's actual care. The rest? It was being funneled into a private account held by my brother Caleb. They were using the money for administrative costs and family support. I saw transfers for a $40,000 truck for Caleb. I saw payments for my parents' luxury stress relief vacations to Florida. I saw a series of bad stock market investments my father had made, trying to double the charity money. They hadn't been in negotiations for a lawsuit. That was a lie to keep me from interfering. They were afraid that if the bills were paid, the public would stop donating. They needed Maya to stay in debt and struggling to keep the cash flowing. They were keeping her in a state of perpetual crisis because crisis was profitable. But the worst part wasn't the money. I called Maya's lead oncologist, Dr. Aris. I had been the one to set up the initial appointments, so I was still listed as a primary contact on her HIPAA forms. Dr. Aris, this is Elena Vance. I'm calling about Maya's recent scans, I said, my heart in my throat. Elena? I'm glad you called. I was wondering why I hadn't heard from you. I sent the results to your father's email last month as requested, the doctor said, sounding confused. What results? The scans from August. Maya is in full remission, Elena. The cancer is gone. We just need to do some follow-up maintenance, but she's essentially clear. I dropped the phone. It clattered onto my desk. Remission. She was okay. She had been okay for months. They hadn't told her. They were keeping her in a state of fear, telling her she was still sick, telling her she needed more experimental treatments that were expensive, just to keep the foundation money coming in. They were gaslighting a cancer survivor, making her live in the shadow of death so they could live in the lap of luxury. I sat in my dark apartment, the blue light of my laptop screen reflecting in my eyes. I felt a cold, hard resolve settle over me. I had a choice. I could stay silent. I could let them keep their secret and let them hate me. Or I could finish what I started. I could truly save my sister. I called Maya. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice thin and raspy, full of the exhaustion of someone who believes they are fighting a losing battle. Eleanor! Hey, baby girl, I said, my voice thick with emotion. How are you feeling? I'm okay. A little tired. Mom said you did something bad, Elena. She said you stole money from the family and that's why you're not allowed to come back. She said you were jealous of the attention I was getting. Is that true? The cruelty of their lie was a physical pain. They hadn't just kicked me out. They had systematically destroyed my character in the eyes of the person I loved most. Maya, listen to me very carefully, I said, my voice steady. I didn't steal anything. I paid your hospital bills with my own savings, every single cent. You don't owe the hospital anything. But I need you to look at something. I'm sending you an email right now. I need you to open it when Mom and Dad are out of the house. Check the attachments. What is it? It's the truth, Maya. It's your medical records from Dr. Aris. and the bank statements for the Hope for Maya Foundation. There was a long, agonizing silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing shallow and quick. They said the money was for my new treatment, the one in Germany that we're saving for. There is no German treatment, Maya. You're in remission. You've been in remission since August. Dr. Aris confirmed it to me today. They've been lying to you to keep the donations coming in. I heard a small broken sound, a sob that she tried to stifle. No, they wouldn't. They're my parents, Elena. They love me. They love the life your illness brought them, I said, the words tasting like ash. I'm coming to get you, tonight. I'll be at the end of the driveway at midnight. Don't tell them. Just bring your ID, your phone, and a change of clothes. We're leaving. Elena, I'm scared. I know, honey. But you're not sick anymore. You're free. I've got you. I've always had you. The drive from Chicago to Ohio usually takes 5 hours. I did it in 4. My mind was a storm of anger and adrenaline. I wasn't the reliable daughter anymore. I was a rescue team of 1. I arrived at the house at 11:50 p.m. The suburban street was silent, the lawns manicured, and the houses looking like the picture of American stability. It was all a facade. Underneath that roof, my family was rotting. At exactly midnight, the front door creaked open. A small figure emerged, wrapped in a heavy coat. Maya looked so fragile in the moonlight, but as she walked toward the car, I noticed something. She wasn't limping. She wasn't hunched over. She was walking with the strength of a woman who had just realized she wasn't a ghost. She reached the car and slid into the passenger seat. She didn't say a word. She just stared at the house. "Did you get your things?" I asked. "I don't want anything from that house," she said, her voice sounding different, sharper, older. "Let's go." We didn't go back to Chicago immediately. I knew my father would call the police and claim I'd kidnapped her. We went to a hotel in a different county. I spent the night sitting on the edge of the bed, showing her the proof on my laptop. I showed her the transfers to Caleb's account. I showed her the emails from her doctors that had been sent to our father's private address. Emails she had never seen. Maya didn't cry. She just stared at the screen, her face turning into a mask of cold, hard realization. "They let me believe I was dying," she whispered. "Every time I had a headache, I thought it was the end." And Mom would just sit there and hold my hand and tell me we needed more money for the fight. She was looking me in the eye and lying to me while I was terrified. "I know," I said, holding her hand. "I'm so sorry, Maya." The next morning, the storm broke. My phone was a weapon, vibrating constantly with threats and pleas. "Where is she?" "You're a monster, Elena. We're calling the FBI." I waited until I knew they were all together. I knew their routine. Sunday morning, they'd be in the living room, probably planning their next fundraiser. I initiated a 3-way FaceTime call. My father's face appeared first, purple with rage. Caleb was behind him, looking panicked, his eyes darting around. My mother was in the background, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Where is she, Elena? I swear to God I will have you put in prison for this," my father roared. "I'm right here, Dad," Maya said, leaning into the camera's view. She looked healthy. She looked angry. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a person. My mother stopped crying instantly. My father's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "Maya, honey, Elena is sick." My mother finally managed to gasp, her voice trembling. "She's had a breakdown. She's trying to hurt us because she's jealous of the family's bond. Come home and we can forget this happened." "I saw the bank statements, Mom," Maya said. Her voice was like a gavel. "I saw the truck, Caleb. I saw the remission emails from Dr. Aris. I saw that you've been telling me I'm dying when the doctors told you months ago that I'm fine." Caleb stepped forward, his face pale. "Maya, you don't understand the legalities. We were building a safety net. The medical system is expensive. We were just making sure you'd be taken care of for life." "By buying yourself a new truck," Maya snapped. "By letting me live in fear every single day." You didn't want me to get better. You wanted me to stay your golden goose. Eleanor, shut this off, my father growled. You've poisoned her mind. You're a traitor to your own blood. I'm the only one who acted like blood, I said, stepping into the frame. Listen to me. I've already sent a digital file to the county prosecutor and the state attorney general. It contains every financial record of the Hope for Maya Foundation, the medical records you suppressed, and the evidence of how you used those funds. I've also sent a statement to the local newspaper. The headline is going to be, "Local Family Charged with Medical Fraud." You wouldn't, my father whispered, the bravado finally draining from his face. You'd destroy our lives. You already destroyed ours, I said. The police will be at your house within the hour. I suggest you get a lawyer, but don't use Caleb's administrative funds to pay for it. Those accounts have been frozen. I hung up before they could respond. The fallout was a whirlwind. The story didn't just hit the local news, it went national. The cancer scam. How a family betrayed their own daughter. The community that had given so much turned on them with a ferocity that was almost frightening. People who had donated their hard-earned money felt violated. The Hope for Maya signs were ripped out of yards and burned. Caleb was arrested first. As the primary holder of the foundation's accounts, he bore the brunt of the legal weight. My parents were charged with fraud and child endangerment. They had to sell the house, not to pay Maya's bills, but to pay for their defense and the restitution ordered by the court. They were pariahs. They lost their friends, their standing, and their dignity. My father's pride was gone, replaced by the orange jumpsuit of a county inmate. But this isn't a story about their downfall. It's a story about the rebuilding. Maya moved into a 2-bedroom apartment with me in Chicago. It wasn't an easy transition. The emotional trauma was a different kind of cancer, one that didn't show up on scans, but ate away at her soul nonetheless. There were nights when she would wake up screaming, thinking she was back in that hospital bed, thinking the shadow was coming back for her. There were days when she sat in silence, mourning the parents she thought she had. But we worked through it. We went to therapy, together and separately. I stopped working 20-hour days. I realized that the success I had been chasing was hollow if I didn't have a life to share it with. I took a less stressful job at a boutique firm, making less money but gaining my sanity back. 1 year later, we were standing on a pier in Lake Michigan. It was a crisp October evening, the kind of day that reminded me of the day I paid off the bills. The sky was a deep, bruised purple, and the city lights were reflecting in the water like fallen stars. Maya looked beautiful. Her hair had grown back in thick, dark curls that framed a face that finally looked at peace. She was holding a sketchbook, her fingers stained with charcoal. She was enrolled in the Art Institute, finally pursuing the dreams she thought had been stolen from her. "I never thanked you," she said, her voice barely a whisper against the wind. "You don't have to, Maya. You're my sister." "No," she said, turning to look at me. Her eyes were clear and strong. "I do. Not just for the money, but for being the only person who saw me as a human being instead of a paycheck. Everyone else saw a victim or a cause. You saw me." "I'll always see you," I said, pulling her into a hug. "They still call you a traitor, you know," she said, leaning her head on my shoulder. "I saw Caleb's letter from prison. He still blames you for everything. He says if you had just minded your own business, everyone would be happy." I smiled, a genuine, warm feeling spreading through my chest. Let them call me whatever they want. I've been called a traitor by people who didn't know the meaning of the word. If being a traitor means saving your life and uncovering the truth, then I'll wear that title like a badge of honor. I'd pay those bills 1,000 times over just to see you standing here, healthy and happy. We stood there for a long time watching the waves. I had lost my parents. I had lost my brother. I had lost the childhood home I once cherished. But as I looked at Maya, vibrant, alive, and finally free, I knew I'd made the best trade of my life. I had traded a toxic family for a real sisterhood. The debt was truly paid. Not just the medical bills, but the debt of truth we owed to ourselves. My family had tried to write a tragedy, but I had rewritten it into a story of survival. We were no longer victims of a disease or a scam. We were just two women walking into a future that was finally, beautifully, ours. As we walked back toward the city, Maya linked her arm in mine. The traitor had found her peace, and the hero was finally going to live her own life. And in the end, that was more than enough. Thank you for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more stories. What was the best part of this story that you liked the most? Was it the moment of the reveal, or the way the sisters stood together at the end? Please drop a comment and let me know.